Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today we're looking at a big name in income investing, Realty Income, the monthly dividend company.
Yeah.
But the real question, based on all the recent reports we've gathered, is pretty straightforward. Is now actually a good time to buy Realty Income? Before we jump into all that, just a quick reminder to please subscribe, like the show, maybe leave a comment, and hey, if there's a specific company you want us to tackle next time, definitely let us know below. We're really here to help you sort through all the noise.
That's exactly right. Our goal today is to pull out the key insights from these sources. We'll look at how Realty Income's been doing lately, how solid their core business really is, and what might be coming up in the next, say, 3 months that could affect the stock price. We're hunting for those details that either back up or maybe challenge the current fairly positive view on the company.
Yeah, and just look at the headlines. It seems like they've been pretty busy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sources show strong execution, the dividends keep flowing reliably, and they're investing quite aggressively, almost like they're ignoring all the market ups and downs we've seen lately.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the actual results. What happened over the last 3 months or so?
Well, if we go back to August, that's when their Q2 earnings for 2025 came out.
Mm-hmm.
Operationally, things look good. But the figure that really matters for REIT investors, it wasn't the net income number. It was the adjusted funds from operations, the AFFO. That came in at $1.75 per share.
Right, AFFO.
Yeah.
That's the key cash flow metric. And $1.05 was solid enough that management actually bumped up the low end of their guidance for the full year 2025.
Exactly.
That's not just tweaking numbers, that signals real confidence from the top, doesn't it?
It does. And you can see where some of that confidence comes from when you look at where they put their money. They invested a huge $1.2 billion in capital just in Q2.
About $1.2 billion?
Yeah, but here's the kicker. 76% of that money went into buying properties in Europe. And they did that at an initial cash yield of about 7.2%. That's a pretty clear strategic move towards global growth.
Hold on, 76% into Europe. That feels, well, pretty bold, given everything going on over there, macroeconomically speaking. Are the sources explaining the why behind that much non-U.S. focus?
They are, yeah. It seems the logic is straightforward.
Yeah.
The yields they can get in Europe, that 7.2% average, are just better than what they're seeing in the U.S. right now. So they're essentially trading a bit more, maybe regulatory complexity for higher immediate returns. Plus, it diversifies them away from relying solely on the North American retail scene.
Okay, that makes sense. Chasing yield and diversification. So how'd they fund all this activity? September saw them tap the bond market, right?
Yep, they did an $800 million bond deal, 2 parts maturing in 2029 and 2033. And they got a pretty good weighted average yield on that debt, just over 4.4%.
So why raise debt now? Just funding deals?
Well, it's partly that, but it's also smart balance sheet management. A big chunk of those proceeds, about $550 million, is set aside to pay off some notes that are due this November. So they're basically taking care of that upcoming maturity early, locking in rates, and making sure they still have cash for more acquisitions keeps the engine running smoothly.
Got it. Proactive financing. And through all these big strategic moves, the shareholders are still getting their monthly check. They nudged the dividend up again slightly, didn't they, to 0.2695 per share, just reinforcing that whole monthly dividend company reputation.
Exactly. It's what they're known for. Now, moving beyond just the recent deals, let's talk about the core business strength that actually supports that dividend. If you look at the bigger picture, their sheer size helps drive some really strong revenue growth. For 2024, revenue hit $5.28 billion. That's up nearly 30% from 2023, which is, well, faster than most other retail REITs out there.
And that revenue growth flows down to the dividend safety net. You mentioned the AFO forecast for 2025 between $4.24 and $4.28 per share.
Mm-hmm.
That comfortably covers the annual dividend, which is around $3.23. So the payout ratio is what, under 80%?
Yeah, comfortably under 80%. And in the world of high-yield REITs, that kind of coverage is considered really quite good. Excellent, even.
Yeah.
And management clearly thinks this is sustainable. You see that because they actually raised their target for total investment spending for 2025 up to $5 billion.
$5 billion? That's a huge number.
It is. It's management putting serious capital behind their belief in their own performance and pipeline.
But, growth is one thing, resilience is another. Where's the real safety for investors here?
Yeah.
The number that jumped out at me from the sources was the occupancy rate. It was almost 99% in 2024.
98.7%.
And apparently it's never gone below 96% since they went public back in 94.
Yeah.
That kind of long-term floor is pretty remarkable. You don't see that often.
No, you don't. And that stability comes directly from their incredible scale. We're talking about the largest net lease REIT globally, Over 15,600 properties now, across all 50 U.S. states and, as we mentioned, 8 countries in Europe as of mid-2025.
That size is the competitive advantage, the moat around the business. It's not just geographic diversification, though that helps reduce risk. It's also tied to how they operate.
Precisely. The triple net lease structure is absolutely fundamental here. Basically, under these leases, the tenants are responsible for paying most of the property level expenses, taxes, insurance, maintenance.
Right, the variable costs.
Exactly. So that protects Realty Income's margins and makes their income stream incredibly predictable even when the economy gets bumpy. That's exactly what income investors are looking for.
Okay, so the foundation looks solid. Let's pivot to the future then. What catalyst could potentially move the stock in the next, say, 3 months? November looks like a busy month.
It does. First up, November 1st. That's when that $550 million bond maturity actually hits. How smoothly they handle that final refinancing step using the money they raised in September will be watched closely. It affects credit perception.
Okay, what else in November?
Early in the month, you might see some noise from ETF or index rebalancing. Think MSCI, S&P. Sometimes those required buying or selling flows can cause short-term swings in the share price. Maybe an opportunity for nimble traders.
Right. And then the big one, Q3 earnings. Probably around November 7th.
That's the estimate, yeah. Investors will be all over that report. They'll want updated acquisition guidance, obviously. But critically, they'll be looking for hard data on the synergies from that massive Spirit Realty deal they did. Is that integration actually delivering the promised savings and benefits on schedule?
Makes sense. Now, what about the rumor mill, the market chatter? Your sources mentioned M&A buzz.
Oh, yeah. There's persistent speculation that Realty Income is gearing up for another significant acquisition. Could be buying a rival REIT or maybe making a bigger move into a related sector to diversify further. They certainly have the financial capacity.
And that ties into other rumors too, right?
Yeah.
About big institutional investors.
It does. There's chatter that some major asset managers, maybe even large pension funds, have been building up significant stakes. They likely see Realty Income as a core holding for steady inflation-linked income, especially with that global reach now.
And then there's the macro angle.
Yeah.
Talk about a potential shift from the Fed.
Always a factor for REITs. The speculation is that if the Federal Reserve unexpectedly turns more dovish, maybe signals rate cuts sooner than expected.
That could light a fire under high-quality REITs like this one.
Exactly, because if market interest rates, like bond yields, start to fall, that steady 5.38% dividend yield from Realty Income suddenly looks even more attractive by comparison. The yield spread widens.
Okay, but we need balance. You mentioned the big push into Europe earlier. Is that where the market sees potential risk?
That seems to be the focus of some counter rumors, yes. The concern revolves around consumer spending potentially weakening in Europe, or maybe specific risks of insolvency among some of their major European retail tenants. The word is that Realty Income's own risk team is watching this very closely, making sure that diversification benefit doesn't turn into a concentrated risk.
Understood. Okay, shifting gears to the stock chart itself, the technical picture. The stock's bounced off its lows, right?
It has. It came up from a 52-week low around $51, and recently it's been trading closer to $60.50. Importantly, it's holding above both its 50-day and 200-day moving averages. Technically, that confirms an upward trend is in place.
And momentum looks okay, not overheated.
Seems pretty healthy. The relative strength index, the 14-day RSI, is hovering around 51. That suggests the upward move has strength, but it's not in that overbought territory that often signals a pullback is due.
So market sentiment seems to still be leaning heavily on that dividend yield advantage.
Definitely. That 5.38% yield is still very appealing compared to what you can get from bonds right now, especially if people believe interest rates are near their peak or might even decline a bit next year.
What are the analysts saying overall?
Well, the consensus rating is actually just a hold, so a bit cautious. But the average 12-month price target is around $61.67, which implies a little bit of upside from current levels. Though some of the more bullish analysts have targets way up near $69 by year-end, suggesting they see potential for significant gains if things break right, like those catalysts firing.
So pulling it all together, what are the main company-specific risks investors should keep in mind, things that could knock this story off course?
I'd say two main things. First, execution risk. Integrating huge deals like Spirit Realty is complex. Any stumbles there could hurt sentiment. Second, tenant risk. Even with diversification, they're still exposed if major tenants run into financial trouble or if certain retail concepts just fall out of favor. In the net lease game, your tenant's health is crucial.
Okay, so we've looked at the REIT's performance, the strong fundamentals, the dividend coverage, upcoming catalysts, the technicals, and the risks. Synthesizing all that information from the sources, what's the final takeaway for someone considering the stock right now? What's the verdict?
Based on our reading of all these materials combined, the overall assessment leans pretty clearly bullish. We'd rate it about an 8.5 out of 10.
An 8.5. So a strong buy signal then. Answering our original question, it seems the bullish case really rests on that track record of solid execution, the very predictable cash flows from those net leases, that attractive defensive dividend yield, and importantly, several potential catalysts coming up just in the next few months' earnings, maybe more M&A news.
That sums it up well, and it suggests the stock could appeal to different types of investors. Maybe shorter-term folks looking to play those upcoming catalysts, but also long-term investors who want that reliable dividend compounding and exposure to growth in global real estate.
Right. And as we finish up, one theme that kept coming up in the sources was Realty Income's sheer size advantage. That scale gives them cheaper access to capital and better deal-making power to the smaller competitors. So maybe the final thought to leave with you, the listener, is this. How much longer can the smaller, more fragmented players in the REIT space truly compete against a global giant like Realty Income with its low cost of capital and market access? And what might that competitive pressure mean for more industry consolidation down the road? Something to think about.